What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and I'm actually tearing up. Like, I'm I'm actually crying. I don't know if it's because this feels like it's the end, it feels like this is it for the show, or if it's just how really incredible the story was written. But it just really got to me. One second. So let's talk about it. Sherlock Holmes Season 4, Episode 3, and the final problem. And from the very beginning, it just starts off. Obviously, the last episode ended on kind of a cliffhanger, kind of a, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? And it was a brilliant setup for this episode. You've got Euros Holmes coming into the picture, Sherlock's sister, and from the very beginning, it starts off on such a good note, in my opinion. First of all, we've got this girl who wakes up on a plane, and everybody's asleep, and the plane is about to crash. And so it's like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden you hear a voice come over the speakers, or no, over a phone saying, "Hi, I'm Jim Moriarty, and this is the final problem." I'm like, oh, goody. This is going to be interesting. And it got me hyped for this episode. It got me ready to go. Next thing you know, we see Mycroft sitting somewhere, I guess in his home, and he's watching a movie. And all of a sudden, like, it just starts flashing. And it starts showing some old videos of him and Sherlock when they were kids. And all of a sudden he starts, like, it just flashes, and it's like, I'm back, or something. I think it said, I'm back. So he's freaking out. Tries to open the door, it's locked. Another door opens, he goes through that one closes behind him. So as the season is going on, all I can think is, this is going to be a dream sequence, right? I've seen this before. This is a dream sequence setting up the fact that he knows Euros is coming back. But what it turns out to be is actually really funny and brilliant, because this whole like scary movie style scene that's set up turns out to be Sherlock just paid a couple people to pretend to be, a little scary girl and then a clown, and then set his house up to freak the crap out of him. So he can get confirmation that Mycroft has lied to him about them not having another sibling. So, I mean, it's a brilliant setup, and we find out that John apparently was not shot with a real gun, it was a dart gun. I knew it, only because of the previews. But the rest of it from there, it rolls and rolls, and it just feels so smooth. Like, this is an hour and a half long episode, just like the rest of them, and it feels like I watched a 2.5 hour long movie. Like, that's how much information was in it, but it didn't feel like it was packed with information. There are times whenever you have an episode of any show where they're trying to get a ton of information in, there are times where it feels like, okay, either they're dragging out a scene because they need to fill the time, or they're putting way too much information into one scene so they can condense it into however long they have. This episode felt like it was perfectly paced, perfectly written to where every scene had something going on. Every scene, there was no scene that felt too long or too stretched out. There was no scene that felt like it was too condensed or too shortened. It was so well paced. And I think it's probably the perfectly paced episode for the final episode for this season. So from there they start looking into some of the stuff going on. They have Mycroft come over to the flat and, explain everything going on. Turns out, apparently, Sherlock had a dog named Redbeard when he was younger, and then the dog disappeared, and she was the only one that... It pretty much said that she got rid of the dog and sang a little song. These dogs need to go. But she sang a little song to give him a clue, and apparently he couldn't find the dog, and so they just sent her away after she burned down the house. Well, then apparently Mycroft told the parents that she had burned down whatever hospital she got sent to and moved her to a facility that he created. So, yeah, very interesting story. And then all of a sudden a drone flies in, Euros' voice is coming out of it, and there's a bomb attached to it. And so, yeah, that one scene where you see Sherlock and Yeah, Sherlock and John flying out the window with an explosion. Yeah, this is that scene. I kind of figured after I saw this whole setup. But they managed to make it out okay. They get on a boat, drive to the island, and once again, more brilliance in how this is all set up because we see an old captain-looking guy, and I'm like, let me guess, Sherlock, and then John's with him. Like, okay, I see what's going on. So they bring them in, and one of the guys thinks he's all clever, and he's just like, this is John Watson, and starts just talking to him. But I'm already looking at you, Mr. Holmes, aren't I? And then looks at the captain, and he's like, yes, you are. All of a sudden pulls off the beard, and it's Mycroft. I'm like, that was brilliant! That was brilliant! It was so brilliantly set up. And then from there, things just started taking a turn downhill. And honestly, I don't really mind this. You know, because like even whenever the whole thing with Moriarty happened in the second season, whenever it was all coming to a close at the final episode, it felt like Sherlock was not in control. You know, it felt like Moriarty had him where he wanted him. He had this entire plan, and Sherlock was just playing by his rules. And then he was caught in a situation where he had to kill himself, and you know, it felt like he was beaten. You know, that's pretty much the feeling I had. And then next season we find out he actually planned everything. You know, he had planned to every last detail. This episode did such a good job of proving to me Sherlock was not in control of whatever happened next. You know, he goes down to see Euros, and she's like, hi, you know, like, how can you not tell how I'm getting out of here? Like, you could tell from the way she was speaking, Sherlock didn't know what was going on, and she knew what was going on. And all the time, we're sitting, all of a sudden going back to John and Mycroft talking to the owner or runner of this facility, and I'm just like, okay, something's going on here, because it's going back and forth, and it feels like things are getting more intense, so what's going on there? Come to find out that this video that they've been watching where somebody was interviewing Euros, all of a sudden John's just like, wait, listen. Just listen. Don't listen to the dog barking downstairs. And all of a sudden I'm just like, what's going on? And all of a sudden John says, that's your voice, isn't it? I'm like, oh, he's been reprogrammed. I get it now. And sure enough, she has the runner of this facility under her control. And so what happens next is Sherlock realizes that apparently there was no glass holding Euros in her cell. It was all just a facade that he couldn't see through, which is kind of surprising to me. You know, I figure at the beginning, I get why he wouldn't see it then. You know, the reflection wouldn't necessarily be an obvious giveaway. But as he got closer, I don't know, I feel like he'd be like, wait, where's my reflection? But he never did that. There was a moment where she said, touch the glass, and maybe because he was so focused on her and her voice, he didn't really notice the fact that he was touching no glass. But I don't know, I feel like he'd be more observant than that. But either way, she ends up knocking him out. The runner of the facility, he sets off the alarm. John tries to break away, but then all of a sudden, he hears this voice come over the intercom, and it's Moriarty. And then all of a sudden, gets knocked out, cut to black, and then you hear this music, and you're just like, oh, there's only one person. There's only one person that song belongs to. Helicopter comes flying in. Out steps Moriarty. He's got headphones in. You know he's the only one listening to it, but he starts doing a dance, and I'm just like, perfect reintroduction for him. Let's go. Let's find out how all of this happened. And then he gets up to the office, and Mycroft is standing there, and it says 5 months or 5 years ago, however long it was. I'm like, you cock tease! This entire season, it was a question of, was Moriarty alive? Was he dead? Moriarty alive? Was he dead? Back and forth, back and forth. After what happened with Euros, last episode, I'm like, okay, so she's the one that planned all of this, right? So that means he is dead. And then this happened, I'm like, never mind. They planned it together. They probably worked out a plan to fake his death and all of it. And then it says 5 years ago, I'm like, The one problem I have with this episode is that they led me on, and it took so long. Like, it had to be at least probably 10 minutes when Moriarty gets introduced to when they finally say, oh, by the way, this was a long time ago. This was in present day. 10 minutes of me thinking, oh yeah, he's back. I'm excited to see what all's going to happen next. What is the plan? And then just come to find out, oh no, this was in the past. And then as soon as he says you're present, I'm like, okay, so now I know what happened. He and Euros probably worked this whole plan out. He recorded all of the stuff, so that's what she's been using this whole time. So yeah, he's dead for sure. It's just really disappointing that they decided to try to fake us out like that. I could have gone without that. They could have had him show up, be like, oh, and then said 5 years ago, and be like, oh, so close. But either way, from then on out, it's all just intensity. Just growing intensity. It's building. It's so good. So good. But there are a few things to talk about. First of all, we get to this scene where the three of them are trapped with the runner of this facility. Actually, isn't he the governor? I think he's the governor. I can't remember who this guy was. Like, he was important in this one scene. But I don't know. Anyway. But yeah, they're trapped in the room with this guy, and apparently Euros has his wife, and she says either Mycroft or John has to shoot him, or else I shoot the wife. Well, this entire scene just building intensity. And at one point, I was wondering how long this was going to go on, and then John just says, I can't do it. Like, all of this building intensity, and then he's just not able to do it. I'm like, what was all this? And then the guy grabs the gun and is like, I'm sorry, and then shoots himself. I'm like, oh, that's what the intensity was building to. And of course, as soon as he does that, the wife is dead as well, because Euros, she's not going to let him get away with that. And sure enough, she points the gun, shoots the wife, and that's it. And so from here on out, I'm like, okay, this is gonna get crazy. This is gonna get crazy. And it does. We get to the next room. Euros has a case that apparently she solved and nobody else could, ready for Sherlock. And so he solves the case. She has the three guys hanging outside the window. And he solves it and gets the guy right. She drops the two innocent guys. And she's like, wait, what? She's like, innocent and guilty, does it really matter who dies? And then drops the guilty guy as well and says, I don't feel any different. I'm like, she's a psychopath. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And then they get to the next room, there's a coffin. I'm like, oh no. Oh no. This is where he's got to decide who to kill, right? And all of a sudden he starts talking, and it's about 5'4", so it's small, most likely for a woman, unmarried. I'm like, I know where this is going. And then Mycroft turns the lid of the case around and says, I love you. I'm like, oh, no, not Molly Hooper. I don't know what it is about Molly. Like, she's not really in the show a whole lot. She pops up every now and then. She's kind of a side character. She was more important, I think, in the first season. But just something about her, just the innocence of her, I think, is what made this scene so much more intense, as Sherlock has to try to convince her to say, I love you back to him. And it's just, the building intensity, I'm freaking out. I'm just like, even if she does say, what's to stop Euros from blowing her up anyway? What if this is all part of the experiment? Like, finally admitting that he loves her, and then she admits that she loves him, and the emotion is there, and then she kills her right there. Like, what is to stop her from doing that? And then the scene ends, they both say I love you to each other, and then she's like, I didn't really have bombs there. I'm like, oh, you little bitch. Like, all of this building intensity, and some of these just lead to nothing. Like, I don't know, it feels like they could have ended a couple of these scenes with maybe a different outcome. Like, maybe Sherlock doesn't get her to say I love you back. But it's because of that she decides not to blow her up. Like, that's the reason. The fact that he's lost that connection with her, that convinced her to say, okay, I'm not going to blow her up, or something along those lines. But just to say, oh, there were no bombs there, that kind of takes away a lot of the intensity. And then on top of that, like I said in the first one, having John kill the governor guy, that would have been much more interesting than just to have the guy say, okay, I'll do it myself, shoot himself, and then have the wife die too. It does weigh on John a little bit, because he realizes, because of my inaction, two people are now dead instead of just one. But at the same time, you still feel like, well, what was that whole scene for if he's not going to kill him? It would be much more interesting if he had to. But it's not a big problem in my opinion. I think it's just something that sort of distracts from the moment when you're really thinking about it. You're just like, when I think back on that scene now, it just doesn't feel as intense anymore. I'm not as tense. And then they get to the next room, and this is the decision room. This is where she says only two people can play the next game. You have to decide between Mycroft and John. And as soon as Mycroft started saying, "Well, it's been nice knowing you, John, and this is your moment," and then he just starts saying all of these horrible things about John. I'm like, I know what you're doing, Mycroft. And then Sherlock just looks at him, and it looks like he can't do it. And Mycroft just starts saying, "You are the weakest you were the weakest brother. That's why I never really liked you." I'm like, I know what you're doing, and Sherlock figures it out too. He's just like, "Stop. He's trying to make it easier on me so I can kill him," and because he's saying all these horrible things. I'm like, this sucks. And Sherlock points the gun at him, and once again, the density is building. Density is building. Moriarty pops up on the screen and says, "This is what it's come to. Holmes killing Holmes." And Sherlock just has this look on his face. I'm like, he's realized something, hasn't he? And he says, 5 minutes. It took her 5 minutes to come up with to get us to this situation. And he says, "I'm not playing your game." And she's like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Ooh, he's got her. He's got her." And he says, "I'm gonna follow the governor's." I think he said step or like follow the governor's example or something like that. And then puts the gun to his chin. I'm like, wait, what? And Euros is like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, wait, she's confused too? What's going on? And he just starts counting down. I'm like, no. And then darts shoot out of the wall and knock them all out. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, so she had a failsafe just in case Sherlock did try to figure this out. Okay. We're good here. We're good. And so that's done. Fades to black. All of a sudden we come back and Sherlock's in this room and a bunch of pictures of himself on the wall, and he picks up a dog bowl and it's got Redbeard on the side, and John's in a well and there's dog bones inside the well. I'm like, okay, so this is the well where Redbeard was dropped, right? Sherlock gets inside the house. Euro starts talking to him. He's trying to figure out how to save the girl on the plane that he's been talking to this entire time. Which, at this point, I kind of figured something was up because the girl was way too calm for a little girl. Like, I don't know. I figured something was going on. Maybe, I wasn't sure what exactly it was. I figured something was going on. I wasn't sure what. So anyway, he gets out, and of course he's back at his old house. He's talking to Euros, trying to figure out where's John, how to save the plane at the same time. And so he just starts talking about, how he searched for the dog, how he tried to find it. And John's just like, "Sherlock, Mycroft lied to you." I'm like, wait, what? What? What's going on? You want to elaborate, John? And Euros just starts saying, what was Dad's worst allergy? I'm like, get my brain ready to be screwed. Continue. And she just starts explaining, dog, you weren't allowed to have a dog. And so they're showing the scene where young Sherlock is sitting there, and there's a big dog, and there's Euros flying her little plane around, and then it follows her, comes back, and there's a little boy with an eye patch on. Just like, Redbeard wasn't a dog. Sherlock apparently had a little best friend that he played pirates with. And the little boy played Redbeard. And Euros got jealous and threw the boy down a well and killed him. That was mind-blowing. Holy shit. That was crazy. I didn't, honestly, I don't know. It's just crazy to me how well they did all of this. How well they just really, truly convinced me it was a dog up until this very moment where you see John just come to the realization that it's not a dog. I'm just like, holy crap, you're a lot crazier than I thought you were. And so this is where we finally have the scene where Sherlock has to figure everything out. And so he goes out to the graveyard. He knows it's something to do with the gravestones and the fact that the dates don't match, and he knows Euros knew that as well. And so he finally works out her song and figures out exactly what she's trying to say. It says, "Find me in my room." So he goes to her room, and that's whenever it kind of clicked in my head as he's heading up there, and he says, you're gonna be okay, or something along those lines, talking to the little girl on the plane. I'm like, oh, it's her. She's using the voice changer thing again. I see. But beyond that, as soon as I figured that out, I'm like, okay, so she's been tricking in this whole. No, she really hasn't. Like, it really is a little girl trapped on the plane. What you don't realize is that little girl is her trapped pretty much in her own mind, just alone, flying in a plane way above everybody else, her mind on a different, for lack of a better word, plane than everybody else's. Nobody can understand her. Everybody else is asleep to her thinking, and she's all alone. And so this is a very real depiction of how she feels. And at that point, that's when the tears started coming at first, because I'm just like, holy crap, this is freaking sad. Like, that's heartbreaking. I don't know how to explain it other than the fact that this is the literal representation of who she is. Everything she's done is because this is how she feels. And it's just like, this is freaking sad. Yeah, she's crazy, but you can understand kind of why. Oh, it was quite the scene. So Sherlock, tries to ends up making her feel better, tells her she's not alone, helps her realize that he's there for her, and then asks her to help him find John. So they get John out of the well, rescue him. We have a moment with Lestrade where he comes in and takes her in. Sherlock calls him great for the first time, which is just kind of like, wow, that's interesting. And so, yeah, that pretty much wraps up the case, but then it doesn't stop there. We see Mycroft is talking to his parents and explaining what happened, and they're just like, how could you do this to us? And at the same time, we see Sherlock getting off a helicopter and going into the prison, and they just start talking about how it was best for them, it was best for her, that they not be near her. And they're like, well, when can we see her? And he's like, you can't. She's not talking. She doesn't talk anymore. Words aren't the way to communicate. And as Sherlock's heading down the elevator, I'm like, I see where they're going with this. The violins. Because they were talking about the violins earlier and how they loved to play the violin. And how the way he played kind of spoke to her. And I'm like, this is wrapping up so beautifully. And sure enough, he goes down there with the violin, starts playing, and it's such sweet, beautiful music. It shows him starting to clean up the flat that got blown up with John and start talking, start to work on getting back to their usual ways. They get a DVD from Mary, another one, saying that they needed to continue to work because, those two are the ones that are there to help people. And as we see the violence get more and more intense, and then all of a sudden, as they're panning around the room, there's Mycroft and the parents just sitting there. I'm like, they're there with them, and Mary just wraps it all up with the boys of Baker Street. Just like, and it's perfect. I know, here's the thing. Looking back on it, obviously I just finished watching it, so saying looking back on it 5 minutes ago, actually this review's probably been going on for 20 minutes ago. But yeah, I'm looking back on it, I'm just like, it was very intense. There were a lot of very intense, scary moments, but ultimately, it wasn't like Moriarty. Moriarty was crazy. He was killing people to hurt Sherlock, whereas Euros was doing it because she was scared. So the villain in this wasn't really even a villain. She was just doing her best. This was like her cry for help to Sherlock, all of this. And so looking back, it's like, well, that's not very intense. It doesn't have to be. It's such a perfect wrap-up for the series. And it kind of makes me sad to say that because I don't want to see it go, but it really does wrap up everything so nicely. Moriarty's dead. we see what happened with Euros. We see what happened with Mycroft and John. The only thing that hasn't been wrapped up is the fact that Irene Adler is still out there. I would have liked to see her in the final episode, but the rest of it is just so well done. And it's such a good ending to the show. And, God, so good. So good. I would like if they could possibly maybe do a different take on it, like, and try to renew it for a next season, but instead of making it like how they did for the first 4 seasons, all about focused on Sherlock, I don't know, maybe focus a bit more elsewhere, focus maybe a bit more on John this time. I don't know. That's the thing about it. I want to see more, but at the same time, it wrapped up so nicely, I can't imagine seeing more. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, so final thoughts on the season, because this is the season finale, and possibly series finale. I think this season was a great success. I mean, obviously the first 3 seasons were really, really good. This one, in my opinion, is just so much better. Not just because the cases were really good, not just because the characters were really interesting, or the whole Euros thing. It's because it was all just so well tied together. And not just these 3 episodes. I'm talking about the Abominable Bride as well. Like, they even threw in a scene from that, where we see him talking to Moriarty in front of the waterfall, and it's just, it all ties in together. The pool, the drowning, all of the, the water that we saw him going through. I can't remember what scene that was now. I can't remember if it was in the second or first episode, but there was a scene where it looked like he was in a pool of some sort. And it was just like, what is this? Like, what does this scene mean? Now we start to realize exactly what it means. It all wrapped up so nicely and it all tied in so well together. And, the only problem I really had with this season was the fact that I think Mary's death was kind of a little bit just thrown in there. And even then, she still wasn't really gone per se. Like, she had 2 DVDs playing just in case she was dead, which I don't know. Like I said in that review, I still think it was a good way to show Sherlock got cocky and it cost him. But at the same time, I still think, yeah, he's gotten cocky before though, and he's still worked everything out fine. So how could he not figure this thing out? How could he not show up in like a bulletproof vest or something? But other than that, I mean, the rest of the season was spot on perfect. The acting was amazing. The camera work, as always, is incredible. The story made me cry. It takes a good story to do that. So, I'm hoping and praying that this is not the end of Sherlock. I'd love to see more Sherlock. If they could do it, I think they can do it. I don't believe that they're going to ruin it in any way if they try to go on from here, but yeah, I do they call the episode The Final Problem, so it does kind of feel like this is sort of the end, the wrap up, all of this. But we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing if they're going to do anything else, if maybe they'll do maybe a couple movies, just maybe one for Irene Adler, maybe one to kind of wrap up everything with Sherlock and John. I don't know. I'd like to see a bit more, though, just because 4 seasons is very, very short, especially when they're 3 episodes each season. It's really sad. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this season and episode. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What did you like and dislike about this episode and season? Let me know what we can talk about and discuss, all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Sherlock reviews, and I'll see you at the next one. Well, if there is a next one. Peace out.